Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bájò, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bájò, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. Hopefully have the audio fixed this time, so please let me know if there's a problem. But how y'all doing?
Pretty good.
I've been I don't know, maybe that last live stream made me physically ill, or probably the stuff that came the next day that wasn't related to the live stream at all. But still, I had to recover for the past week, so unfortunately I haven't been able to get so much ready for talking about this episode. No, the show didn't make me sick. I'm kidding. It was great, actually. There was a lot to kind of see from it, from some perspectives that we haven't quite seen as much of. But then likewise, there was a lot of stuff that was just I guess kind of confirmation of what we've seen up to this point still being the direction things are going. So they talked about a lot. We saw a lot about combat that it kind of seemed like the sort of things we were maybe expecting to see from combat, and like this sort of scale, and talking about the elite mobs and getting through the whole dungeon and stuff. Yeah, there's some good stuff with it. The orb of unlimited essence for the dragon's egg. I thought that was a funny little bit. So now that we've had a chance to talk, everybody out there, does everything sound good? Diggs, why don't you say a little bit more so people get a little bit more volume check there?
Oh, I don't know. I was just gonna say it's hot, by the way, in Los Angeles.
Yes.
It's hot. Um, but
Record
yeah, no,
breaking heat wave.
I don't know that I have a lot to say about that. I've been in the forums quite a bit lately talking about soloing, and it is Ashes made for solo players, and I guess solo players have no reason to play or something like that. They're always going to be behind everybody else. I didn't really understand that perspective, why you're always behind, because you know you can be in a guild and have guild mates help you out with stuff and still play solo. Usually there's a guild bank, so you can. It's like you'll always have the worst gear. Like, I mean, people share gear even with solo players. Like there's stuff that you can do outside of a group. You don't always have to be in a group. Um, but then what was the other one? Was oh, we need to overhaul the class system. It's horrible. It's not going to work. So they
Wait,
might as
what?
well just go ahead and do that now. Yeah.
Wait. The class system is horrible now? I mean, there's
'Cause
definitely. Oh, go ahead.
they can't do real 64 classes, and so that means that people aren't going to be able to play their class fantasies. They're going to see the names like Necromancer and stuff like that, and there's not enough difference. How do you know the difference between a high sword and a Templar? And if we don't know that difference now, then how can they make the 64 classes? So I don't think they're going to change that. We'll test it, and
I
then
think we got to be a little bit more concerned about them getting 8 right before we worry about 64.
yeah.
There's a comedian who made the joke of Baskin Robbins. Why do you have 32 flavors if you can't get vanilla right?
Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Not a sponsor. Clearly not a sponsor.
So that's
I
where I've
don't
been
know.
spending most of my time this past week.
Well, we
And
can
I'm
get.
not saying that they don't have one class right. I'm saying it's, let's get the core 8 archetypes, the primaries, up and running and feeling good first before we even worry about how the secondary archetypes influence with them.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't seen Rogue yet, and we haven't seen the active skills for Rogue. That's kind of concerning because you would think, Rogue is, I don't know, shouldn't take 7 years for us to see Rogue, but um, and then Summoner. Summoner, I'm not necessarily surprised would be the last. Um, Rogue, I'm kind of surprised is taking this long. It's like,
You think we'll see
we should have
Summoner or
seen,
Tolnar first?
right? We should have seen something and then tweak it. Like with all the tweaks. The thing that I think gets me is, why have we seen 3 passes on cleric, tank, and mage when we haven't seen rogue yet? But
I think because they want to have the frontline meat shield, the healer, and the high damage source as the trinity that they would be focusing on first, and then expand out from there. Because the way they've talked about it, it definitely sounds like any party of 8 trying to do something significant, you gotta have a tank and you gotta have a cleric. Is like it's almost been ingrained, but at the same time, they also intend for you to have approximately one of each primary archetype in your party of 8. So it's not to say you must have a tank and you must have a cleric so much as just have one of everybody. You got to be able to, get everybody's group and individual buffs and, enemy debuffs and coordination features and stuff, that they're all supposed to work together. And it just so happens that, well, let's start with the ones that we know people in MMOs and MMO gameplay are going to need to understand and be okay with the most, which is either fighter or tank, but the person who's going to be up front giving and dealing the physical damage. The healer, whatever healer you want to use, is going to be the cleric for a while. And the could be a mage, could be some other sort of high damage person. They could have done rogue as like a CC damage dealer. They could have done ranger as like a CC and damage dealer. They went with mage. I think it's okay that they've been kind of reworking those ones a little, because I feel like part of it was also we've reworked the class and we've reworked features of the game. For example, when they were demonstrating the switch over from their original action and movement system to being able to have the upper half and the lower half do separate things, that that was one of those things where we're going to do a class demo alongside it, because just showing the root motion stuff is not going to be as impressive a demo of its own, for example. So yeah, I can understand maybe why the ones that they were a little bit more for. Also because they're the ones we saw in Alpha 1, so the ones that we have the most familiarity with as the players.
um, yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why they keep tweaking them is because we're also getting these fundamental changes. Like, now we have hunts and dances and marks, and once you have those kind of groupings in one, you're like, oh, we could have this for, how would that work for mage, and you know how would that work for uh tank? What kind of group categories can we give the active skills to, that they didn't have before? I still would rather have seen rogue maybe before I mean, I'm not surprised they're tweaking them, but I would have rather they. It's kind of like when you're playing D&D, and the thing is to, like, you go ahead and finish each big bad. Everybody pile on the big bad and kill them before you split things up, and you're trying to do everything with everybody. But I don't know. It's all fine. It's just gonna take. I think once we knew it was gonna not be before 2020, they've got more time. They got more time to tweak everything. It's okay. It's not coming
It's
out
funny.
before 2020.
It's funny that you bring up D&D because I've been thinking more and more about the idea of a more cautious party, that you might have a larger group and you might have, let's say, one of each class because it's a very large group. But does that mean it's going to fight like an MMO group? No, not necessarily. Your ranger, your paladin, your fighter, they might all be using long range weapons. They hit just as hard with them as they do their close range stuff. No reason not to use bows at the start of the battle. So that's kind of a funny thing because with MMOs, it's expected main tank, shove your face into whatever the thing is that you're trying to tank, and make sure you never let it stop smooching with you while everybody else is beating it up. And that's not actually the way tabletop games are entirely played. So it's kind of a funny thing. Um, but I think again, it's hard to be like, how are they going to pull off 64 classes? It's like, well, they're going to have 8 primary archetypes, and then they're going to have 8 secondary archetypes, and they're going to have labels that refer to the primary and secondary archetype combinations and the symbols you can see on their nameplate that will indicate potentially what they are. But I what else needs to work about it, really?
They're
It
just saying
it
people are gonna see the names like, uh, well, I mean, I think we know the difference between necromancer and shaman, and what they're planning thematically for that. But they're like, you come in and you see a Templar, you should know, what you want to play. What is that? Um, Probably, or a paladin, right? Because you normally play paladins are going to want to play exactly like that in Ashes. Like, well, if you spend any amount of time looking into the game, you're going to see how the classes actually work. And then if you like that concept, you play the game. If you don't like the concept, then you choose a different game that you like better. I mean,
yeah. It's and I'm also going to go back to D&D and tabletop games for a moment, because while necromancy has this like evil tinge to it, if you look at all the revive spells, by and large, they're necromancy. Things that prevent someone who's almost dead from being dead, that's necromancy. And
mm,
so a necromancer to me doesn't have to mean somebody who raises the dead, which, as you've talked about, some cultures that's actually more of a reverence to be able to be with your deceased ones. But
mhm,
to think about a necromancer as like, oh no, one of my party's members went down. Well, I'm a little tougher for a moment because I've captured a part of their spirit to help me bring them back, and I can do my in battle reses for cheaper and faster because that's what I specialize in. I'm a necromancer. What did you think? I'm some sort of like skeleton zombie maker? Ew,
mhm, mhm,
ugh, no. I'm a
mhm,
necromancer.
mhm,
I'm not a lich. Come
mhm,
on.
mhm, mhm.
I mean, so
Yeah.
so so people are already wanting to talk about how classes need to be changed before we even have 2 of the original 8.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
That's
I
what
mean,
you're
they've been
saying?
asking for the classes and
Yeah.
archetypes to be changed for like 2 years now, so this
Well,
isn't actually new.
I mean, there's always people who come in and, they'll say, okay, we need a PvE only server. Or they say corruption is never going to work. You need to just get rid of that. Either it's too hard or it's not hard enough. Um, you know, I mean, these are the typical things that come up. But the thing that got me this time was um, one of the people promoting this was saying, I'm getting impatient with all the people telling me, to just go with the design and wait until we test it. I'm getting impatient with those people. I'm like, you don't think the veterans who've been around for 7 years aren't impatient having to repeat this like every, I don't know, 4 months or something? It's never going to work without a PvE only server. Okay. Corruption is never going to work. Okay, but can we test corruption first? Can we test corruption? I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Yeah. I mean, even to the extent that they've talked about it, they've already internally made balance changes with it.
Yeah.
So we don't even know what the state of it is internally. And I'm sure if we had been exposed to that, and every time they made a change to the corruption system, they did like a little 15-minute video, we'd have a lot of those little 15-minute videos, and they wouldn't really amount up to anything, because those are just incremental changes to a system that still hasn't even been tested yet.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the 64 classes won't work, but that's one of the draws of the Kickstarter. I mean, I'd like to like actually see it before
Well, yeah.
it's not even in. Like, maybe they do need to change it, but I'd like to at least see what the vision was before they're like, nah, let's not do that. Let's do something
Yeah.
else.
A certain somebody in our chat had hashtag balance is a myth that they said just a few minutes ago. And to be
Hmm.
perfectly honest, they've said multiple times that ultimate, true, everybody is equal but different sort of balancing is not actually their target. They want to give
Yeah.
you enough tools, enough build options, enough opportunity to take what they give you and make it into something awesome. What they're not going to do is sit there playing with the levers, fine tuning everything to try to make it balanced at the get go, and then how people end up modifying from there will start making your, the usual problem, your flavor of the month build. It's like, okay, what build works now?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so it's nice that there's going to be enough variance in so many ways and so many places, and the fact that you're not going to be using the same like fixed crafted item that every crafter has made 10,000 of in order to get up to the next point of crafting level in whatever game they're playing. And so there's just steel true seal great swords just on the market all the time for you to buy up on the cheap. No, that somebody who's making a sword can actually be making it in a way that specializes for the way you play. You can have a custom bespoke sword made for you that improves your build in a way that somebody else using that sword would be at a disadvantage for using, because it does not work with them in any way. So, when it comes to balance, a lot of it's going to be, we're going to give you the tools. And if something is like completely out of whack or is like absolutely mechanically exploitable, then they'll actually come through and probably do something about it. But so long as something isn't so completely out of balance that there's no counter to it and it is simply the best and only way to go, then it's fine. Then, some people will be able to make something work, and some people will be able to find ways to counter it. And some groups might not even address it altogether because they have an entirely different play style. Like I think about just as an example of a game maybe people played, Final Fantasy Tactics. I've played that game through enough times that I've seen like literally different ways to build and different ways to make the characters do different things. And there have been runs where there were certain classes that we just didn't invest in because they didn't bring much to the table, and other ones that everybody has to have because it gives some of the proper abilities and defenses and counters that you just need to be able to maximize gameplay for that way of doing it. And there's different ways of doing that. And I'm not going to say that like anything is balanced or imbalanced in some like bad way. It was done in a way, at a style, for its time, and it gave enough variance and opportunity for players to make good decisions or make bad decisions and have to grind to get themselves back up into a good place. So
Yeah, but I
it's
think
I'm,
I
I'm
think
liking
they're
that it's not going to be just approximately we want 64 balanced classes. It's too hard to do.
yeah, and focus on those 8 because it's easier to balance those 8 for whatever balance they're gonna have. There's also rock paper scissors in there, so it's not gonna be um
You know what's interesting in
exactly
that
equal anyway.
when he says rock paper scissors, combining the opposite as your second, like so you're however that pecking order is, like if you pick
Mm,
something that's a secondary that's not
mhm,
in that,
mhm,
like how much does that actually get you to
mhm.
be out of balance with everyone else? I don't know. Like, why are people even talking about that? That's like we still don't have two of the main classes. How far are we away from even like let's let them actually do secondary stuff before we start saying, "Oh, this sucks."
Yeah. Yep.
And
I
then they
mean,
and then they want to
yeah,
do 15 to 20 other classes. Like that sounds even more
No, they
painful.
want to do. They want to. No, they want to have a set. So instead of they want it to be like instead of doing the archetype thing, just have 15 to 20 true classes. They want to have,
How
the world.
how long has
So
it
have
taken
true.
us to get 6?
The,
And they want 20?
that I did not think about.
yeah.
Even
I
15, even
appreciate.
12.
I will say I appreciate people coming into this community. I appreciate people who are new to the community, who want to share their opinions, who see a lot of stuff they like about the design and have opinions about things that they would want to see different. That's good. That's healthy for the game. But you got to take a moment to kind of understand the goals of the game, how long it's taken to get here, what decisions led it up to this point, and then kind of take a step back. It's like, well, are the things that I'm thinking about really feasible for what they're trying to do? And, especially for where they're at and where where they're looking with their milestones, and especially with their burn rate. Good Lord, I would imagine it's going to be like 20 to 30 million dollars a month for like each month going forward, potentially, once alpha starts. Maybe less, maybe I'm mistaken,
Holy crap,
but
that's a lot.
I get the feeling they're gonna have a really big burn rate. I don't know if they would answer it, but I'm kind of wondering if that's something they would actually answer, feet to the fire, or whatever. Like, do you have an estimate for your, burn rate and budget for Alpha 2 in its entirety? Are you looking at like, $200 million? Do you think that'd be enough to cover it? Like, that's already double what triple what they've, or would put to triple what they're currently having spent on it, to throw an extra 200 million in over the 90 million that's already gone in. Um, but it's feasible. It is feasible that, the amount that they've spent up to this point is still on the cheaper side compared to what Alpha 2, Beta 1, Beta 2 are going to be like. And then the hope is that when it launches, that everybody brings everybody with them, and it, is able to more than make that money back in a reasonable amount of time.
You can start going back and doing sub costs. Obviously that doesn't pick up what they will make in cosmetics, but you can certainly go back and start thinking, all right, if you have 150,000 alpha 2 testers and on release, say you have 300,000, like you can start looking at the like how much they're gaining per month to see how long it will take to catch up for Steven to recoup everything. Um, Starts to get significant over time, especially with them ramping up. So I do think that's why we've seen everything move forward. So I'm going to use the word quickly in relation to the past because the money is starting to get kind of there. I've mentioned this in a couple of chats, but when Steven on that last stream, they actually talked about money. I think he said they've spent what 90 million, 60 of it his. You can see, and maybe this is just because I'm trained to like pick up on people. Like you can just see it in his eyes, like in his face, the sort of oh shit, this is a lot of money. Uh, so um, God bless him for doing what he wants to do and making the game he wants to make. So is it me? What is this?
Yeah, we have to see everything before beta.
Yeah. So MF says, is it me or does anyone else think there is a lot we will not see until the beta? I mean, they're supposed to be feature complete by
Yeah,
beta.
that's what beta means. So
So
But feature complete doesn't mean content complete. And
explain
so,
that.
Feature complete means mechanically all of the features are in and implemented. That doesn't mean that the content to make the most of those features is in. You can
Well, I
have the
mean,
entire combat system working and only have like 5 of each of every weapon type that there is in the game that are, distributed across the levels just for testing. It doesn't mean that the combat system isn't fun and fully implemented. It just means the content of it, that the equipment is not fully filled out. So, yeah, it might be feature complete, but that doesn't mean it's content complete. All the
like,
stories for the game will
give me
not have been written at the start of Beta 1.
yeah, yeah. We don't necessarily need to see that, but I mean, like all classes will be in.
Yeah,
Um,
feature complete.
and
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I was just
yeah.
making sure I understood what you meant by that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're I'm not second guessing you. You're definitely right. It's
No, I
being
was just pointing how you were demarcating features from content. That's all. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm with you.
My old eyes cannot read your name here, trainer. Says I'm curious if their subscription model is going to keep PvE players invested for long-term subbing.
PvE players won't be playing this game, so it's okay.
If you're
Um,
playing the game, you're not a PvE player. Apparently, you're
No. Mm.
playing a PvX.
Well,
That
at best, and really it's PvP, but on PvP servers you focus on PvE, but you really would basically be playing like WoW on a PvP server.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just got to see what happens, right? Um,
yeah. Will there be servers that have less people in active combat with each other and servers
Yeah,
with more people in active combat? Sure. And after the
yeah,
game's been around for, weeks, months, a year or two, you'll probably be able to find which ones are the more calm ones and which ones are the more rowdy ones. And, people will be able to start flocking to those as the culture of each server starts to mature.
yeah. I think PvEers, and I consider a PvEer someone who normally plays WoW or EQ on a PvE only server. They aren't going to be playing at Ashes.
I mean, we'll see, right? Um,
Everything is subject to change, so we'll have to see how much things change. But
I think
I
it's
think there will be other games that
it's clearly
PvEers will be playing.
clearly not the target audience, but they need to make up a part of it. Hopefully, this was actually another conversation that I forget which Discord it was in about targeting PvP, but then also in relation to this raid. Um, and I wonder what you all think about this. Like that, there was a discussion about this sort of open world raiding. Uh, whether this is actually going to be something that your high tier raiders that you find in games like WoW or Final Fantasy are going to want to do. The
Hmm.
the general consensus that came out of that discussion was no.
Hmm.
And so then that also goes to like, all right, so there's no PvE players, your raiders. Although I do think that the high challenge raiders are probably a smaller percentage, but
Hmm.
I don't
I
know.
mean, high challenge raiders are probably a lot of the people that are also going to be top tier PvP.
Yeah, there's a contingent Noani in the forums who is more of a high end PvE raider who will say, he has concerns about playing Ashes. I think for that reason, right? You kind of want to be able to do your thing without having to have other players, without battling other players while you're trying to do your elitist uh, PvE stuff against the bosses. But
I wonder if they keep this what we saw as a level 20 world boss. That seemed for the level that seemed challenging.
mm.
That seemed really really hard. As in, they would not have succeeded if not for Steven having sort of god powers. And I don't know how many people they resurrected mid battle. It was like
Mm.
8 or 9. I don't know. It was a lot. Um,
Mhm.
I almost felt like it's
Well,
too
that's not so
challenging.
bad. That's probably enough time for people to run back if they couldn't get the res.
But run back. That's not going to happen here, right? They're
Well, I don't know that. Yeah, in Alpha 1, you just spawn at the nearest local respawn point, and where you want to go from there is up to you. Are you going to have a little bit of death penalty? Yeah, maybe. I mean, I thought the death penalty was incurred upon death, not when you get up. That might be
Yeah.
changed too, but I thought it was just because you got res doesn't mean you don't have the death penalties.
Yeah, I mean that's the other part for the challenge. The Raiders like challenge is the sort of, I think the known process to that is you're going to die. You're going to die a lot as you figure out the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And with the penalties here, like that I think just drives that crowd away. Everyone always says the 20% that are instanced, but I don't know. We've not seen that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be that battling a world boss considers the area one of those open event spaces where you don't actually suffer those penalties, and so it's encouraged for you to go and, you know, fight the boss for a bit, and then at some point start attacking the other people that are fighting the boss because you want to get the loot.
So here's the thing. It's so hard to judge all of this. I mean, it looked, the boss looked cool. I, for those wondering, I did not partake in this, so I have nothing. So PI was released. The PI members that participated in this were released from their verbal NDA, so they can talk about it. That does not include me. I did not play in this one, so I can only speak to what we saw. The thing that starts driving me nuts, and I have admittedly over the last couple of weeks started to hit some sort of burnout with, I don't know, I've lost, I've not been in any forums, I've not been in any discords, I've not made any solo videos. I don't know what's going on in my brain. It might just be work, I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
work's also been challenging. But
Other stuff has come out too. There's other stuff to play. So.
oh yeah, BG3's been hella fun. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
what's starting to drive me a little nuts, because and I'm going to parallel this to all of the other showcases, right, where we were shown really polished mechanics over the last 2 years, and and then over the last several months, you start seeing the bugs and you start hearing about the bugs, because I think people, they start realizing, oh, people are going to expect these polished encounters, and we're in an alpha state. Similar to that, they keep saying PVX, PVX, but everything we see, all of this braid, there's no PVX encounter to it. Like I want to see Carfin. There was no PVX encounter to it. Like they're
What do you
showing
mean by that?
there's no one coming in to fight them for it.
Mm,
It's just pure PVE content.
mm,
And that is largely what we have seen in these streams, is pure PVE content. And
mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a similar message to, and the same sort of idea of the polished videos, and that's not the game. The game isn't a
Mm-hmm.
PVE game. It has PVE
Mm-hmm.
components.
Mm-hmm.
Because that boss looked hella hard just as it was. Add in
Mm-hmm.
another guild or two fighting you for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Impossible. Impossible. Like I don't know how that would even work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
People will say, "Oh yeah, lineage 2, blah blah blah." But anyways, I'm looking for, I want to see the PVX, and I think we will not see that until Alpha 2. I think the first we will actually see that occurring are they're going to be the streams of players playing the game, play testing the game in Alpha 2. And that's kind of drove me nuts a little bit. I've been wanting to see that component. Maybe Ivy says they might want to balance PvP before they do PvX box. I mean, sure,
Yeah.
but
It's interesting because again, yeah, we want to be able to test corruption, and that's, you were talking about just the death penalties, but what about the corruption penalties that come as you're trying to come back in and um fight the boss?
Well,
Um,
if you're joining a boss battle like that, it'll auto flag you, so you shouldn't have corruption.
is that right? Is this PvP event a
Yeah,
battleground?
world raid bosses
Okay,
are considered like a
battleground. Okay.
yeah. So that would if that's going on, you would auto flag on the. I would imagine within a certain proximity of the event.
I got you.
Well, then that makes failing on the raid not as painful.
Hmm.
It sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. Or alternatively, it could be the moment that you attack the boss that's the moment it flags you. So if you're
No, I
coming
think
to
just
try to
it's an event, so it should have flagged you
yeah,
immediately.
it
Yeah.
should be once you're in the area, but
Hmm.
let's say
Hmm.
you're like getting close to the area, maybe it'll give you like 10 seconds to run back, otherwise you're going to get flagged and be part of the event here. Just so that way people who
Yeah.
don't want to be a part of it can back out and not lose their don't gank me
Hmm.
defense.
But
Hmm.
but even fighting to the raid boss, I mean, they're just going about like a normal party, just fighting things. Like, the expectation is that this should be a world boss that is highly
Well,
sought out, and that people
but
will be
see,
camping.
I think my problem with that is that you should not be fighting this boss because you're competing for loot. You should be fighting the boss because the boss is um, a threat to the area. So the quintessential example we have for this world boss concept is the Winter Dragon, who brings with them perpetual winter, and that perpetual winter is gonna cause issues for the region. So you're going to want to kill the winter dragon to remove the perpetual winter. That should be the primary reason for going after um, the boss. And yeah, again, that's why I say PvE players won't be playing, because that should be the primary reason, but everything has the risk of PvP. And, probably if I'm trying to be the hero by getting rid of this threat that is the winter dragon, but I gotta fight other players who just want loot, I'm not probably going to be as interested to do that. I'll
Well,
go play some
that's
other
Yeah.
game where I don't
well,
have to
and
worry
I
about that.
The way that they kind of showed this one was very specific, like a story event that players launch when they're ready. You know the Citadel's there. Maybe you have to be at a certain tier of node before access to it actually becomes available. So Citadel's there and available. You raid the Citadel. You successfully defeat the thing at the end to free up the orb. Now you've got the orb, which is the dragon's egg. So if you want to take the egg home and place this relic in your reliquary for great justice, you're going to need to get it home. And so while everything was not done in a the dragon's going to pursue the person with the orb sort of format, that's more what I would expect from it. In fact, that was a little bit of my discourse on Facebook when they posted about it. Was it didn't look like Firebrand was trying to chase anybody. Why not just have the orb runner run home? And if the dragon is engaged in combat with other people and doesn't notice its egg is running away, well, then you're able to kind of pull it off. Otherwise, it's like, hey, no, that egg is a homing beacon. Whoever's got it, I'm throwing my full fury at. And if they drop, I'm just going to keep clearing the rest of you until I can pick it back up and take it home. And once I take my egg back home, oh, you boys are in danger. The world is in trouble. Um, or you actually do manage to get it home and you do get to boost yourself. Now, you can have the Steel Bloom event occur again once the place has kind of refreshed itself, and you can do everything up to fighting the raid boss. Then, or you get up to the end of the altar or whatever, you'll get loot from the altar. It won't be the orb, and when you go outside again, yeah, maybe you'll see Firebrand again, but instead of trying to get the orb back, because that part has already completed once and that story arc has already resolved itself once and won't change again, this is just a replay. So you can try to fight Firebrand again and try to get that sweet loot and those blueprints and materials. Um, so I mean that's kind of the way I saw the whole thing, is that it was this very like cut and dry, like you do it once, and if you succeed to get the orb out, then you've escalated the event, And once you've escalated it, now you're in the real, like, are you going to change the server for good or bad sort of thing? Are you accidentally going to give the egg back to the dragon, or are you going to manage to defeat it and get it home? Or maybe you don't manage to defeat it, but you do get it home, and it comes to attack your city. Golly, wouldn't that be fun? That you fail like that, you fail upwards, basically, that you've now taken the orb home and you've gotten it in, but you didn't beat the boss, so now you've got to fight them from your home and watch your buildings get burned. That's some of the sort of dynamic stuff that we're hoping to see, but it didn't really get played out to that extent because it's not fleshed out to that extent. So they showed, the verisimilitude of what the event might be like without, like, kind of getting it through the paces of what it would actually feel like in the context of the story and live gameplay. And in doing so, yeah, it did just feel like, oh hey, we did the 8-player raid group, or the party sized event, and now the rest of our raid group, hey PI out there, are ready to join the bigger battle that, players might not necessarily know might be coming when you do this, but when you have done the event a couple of times, we've seen people do it on other servers, you might know, oh hey, when we get the orb, this is going to be a dragon, let's be ready.
We got some long chats.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll get to that one. I want to kind of wrap up what we're talking about now because that's an interesting question. Um, sorry, I'm just thinking in my head. So yeah, with when I talk about PvE PvP, I don't know that I've mentioned this on this stream. I've mentioned it again a couple of discords. My thing with bringing these people in and trying to blend the groups is there's a really fun theory called a flow theory that's existed for like 50 years or something now. It's a psychological theory of how we essentially when you're sort of in the zone and you kind of lose yourself in whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be video games. It could be sports. It could be a number of different things. Um, Essentially, it's a positive experience, and it's what drives us to continue doing games and stuff like that. Um, One thing that is important about it is you have to have challenge. So whatever you're doing has to be fairly well balanced with your skill. Obviously, the challenge should be a little bit harder so that your skill you can skill up, but not so hard that you're going to fail because that just that drives anxiety, and not so low that people just get bored. Um, and so where I'm going at with this is everyone has sort of their different levels of skill, and so you're trying to bring in PVE and PvP players who have different approaches to these things, and I don't know, it's going to be that PVX scenario is going to be, I'm sure, thrilling for people who love PvP because they see that as a challenge, and they're trying to meet that challenge, they're trying to succeed at that challenge.
Mhm.
And the reality is PvE players, that's not their challenge. They're out there trying to gather things, trying to craft, trying to whatever. So I don't know. That's where I just get kind of skeptical a little
Well,
bit about how easily this is going to happen.
I don't see it in terms of skill. I consider myself to be a casual challenge player as opposed to a hardcore challenge player. And we saw that when we were playing Nightingale when you were like, Diggs, you can go play on. You've got enough armor and, hit points or whatever to play on hardcore and I was like, I don't want to play on that level. I can do it. I know I can do it, but that's not the level of challenge that I want to play at. I want to play at it.
Right.
I want to play on easy mode, so I play on easy mode.
Perfect example. And
Hmm.
where I was in a different place, right? I was
Hmm.
doing the most challenging I could because that's what I found fun.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
so
Yeah.
so Nightingale offered us that, right? Nightingale
Hmm.
offered us the ability to approach things differently in a way that we
Hmm.
both enjoyed and in a way that we both
Hmm.
could learn and improve. I just have a
Or just
with
play and have fun. It wasn't even about improving
right.
for me. Just having
So
fun. Yeah.
that's just where my mind gets hitched up a little bit with trying to blend PvP and PvE players. Like, how do you do that successfully in the game design that is Ashes of Creation?
Hmm.
I think it's been done in other MMOs, but not, Ashes isn't like other MMOs. It's trying to push the node system and PVX, and you know, um, I know we've kind of joked about players being content for other players. It's true.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, it's not that ain't a joke, my man.
yeah,
That's the real
it
deal.
is.
but but that is the thing I want to say right there is that when people talk about players being content, and this happened, I think I first started seeing this on the EverQuest Next forums. That pisses PvEers off, which is again why I say, you know, uh, PvEers don't want to be other people's content. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
how you're going to get those two groups on the same server is what I've been trying to figure out ever since EverQuest Next said there was only going to be one server type 2. Because yeah, I don't want to play on the same server as people who consider me as content.
I think my headspace changed somewhere around the whole Alpha 2 and everything that sort of came from that. I think that's where I've kind of had this sort of step back. Because the other thing that I get a little frustrated about with Steven when he's talking, and I think this is true, he I think if you talk to anyone in the Ashes, at least Discord, and ask them about Asmon, as an example, I don't think anyone actually expects him to play this because of the PBX nature. Like the first time he gets PK'd while he's on stream trying to raid, like, he's going to get very frustrated. And I think that's
Hmm.
probably accurate with several of the big time streamers that
Hmm.
don't want that sort of interaction. And
Hmm.
what frustrates me a little bit is when they sort of kind of apologize, not really apologize for everything that happened. They were talking about the Alpha 2 key and sort of how they went back and
Hmm.
listened. He didn't start off saying like, well, the community spoke. Like he started off by saying Kira and Asmon, um, you know, and the community, we heard you loud and clear. It's like, what? I get a little frustrated by that too, because your community was also sort of telling you like, hey, this is kind of frustrating. But it took Asmon, who is, I really don't think is going to last very long in Ashes of Creation. And
Hmm.
when we talk about target audience, like, I don't think he is. I don't think
Hmm.
he is target
Hmm.
audience. And so
Hmm.
so trying to make changes, so having that be what pushes you to make changes is kind of frustrating a little bit.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyways, moving on from my negativity. Um, so there was a question in chat about players. I don't think I'll read it all because it's a long question. Um, but effectively talking about, if you had 100,000 active players times sub cost of $15, would that be enough to support the studio going forward? Um, I don't know what you all said because I was busy talking, but I think
Hmm.
someone might have mentioned that um, the cosmetics. We certainly don't know about cosmetics here. I
Hmm.
also wonder about 100,000. Like, I've talked, I won't say who. When you talk to some of the people that are really, really invested in Ashes, and we all are, but like they're like really into this. I think somebody, they've talked about, well, what if this is a population of like Eve Online? Like, well,
I think that's the numbers we're looking at. Eve Online and Albion is the best. That I mean, if that's what you have to hope for, right?
yeah, well, but I mean, you can see how many people are on on Eve. Like, I think it's usually
What I'm
around
saying.
20 to 25,000 concurrent. A lot of those are going
Hmm.
to be bot accounts,
Hmm.
because the way skills are done in Eve, like
Hmm.
you typically have more than one account.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's super low. Um,
That's what I'm saying, and I think it's gonna. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at Eve numbers or Albion numbers, somewhere around there. That's around where Ashes is gonna be.
Strixon says, "Now Asmon will vanish faster than his hairline." Yes, I think here's how I picture this happening. Um, October 25th, um, starts.
Of 2024, of
Yes,
2024.
yes, coming up. Didn't he do this with? I think he did those New World, right? Like, got in there and like did some bosses on New World, some raids, led like big groups of raids. and I assume that's probably what he's going to do again in Ashes. But it's just going to take a handful of people that are watching him on stream that are going to like, I'm going to fuck this up just for fun, and that's that's going to happen. I mean, that's just going to happen. But
How does that not happen to Co Carnage? It seems like any game he plays, he's got this community of dedicated people just like gathering resources and helping him build and like being his best buddy and insulating all the jerks from the gameplay space that people are seeing. Like what is so different? I know we've known about Co Carnage since Landmark, but it's just like so different every time I see him and his community go into something. Valheim comes in, he goes and plays it. His community throws tons of resources. He builds a giant freaking castle. I'll do that in any sandbox game. And so, like, what is the difference? Like, there's something going on different where you can have somebody who has such a positive community that, yeah, even if they do get ganked, you can just laugh it off because that person that ganked you is about to get their comeuppance. Not once, not twice, but a little bit more. And so, like,
well,
that's the other thing that I kind of think about with this is like, is it maybe that the content creator and how like positive they are and dedicated their fan base is will correlate with how much they can actually play and enjoy a game that can be sabotaged by bad actors that are looking to rain on their parade.
I think part of
Well,
that.
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think part of that is just the creators themselves, right? Co's very laid back, very chill. He's not going to tell people to go eat a dick, and he's certainly not going to post that to YouTube. What was it? Asses of creation, and
Mm,
and players need to just go. What did he say? Players or
mm,
somebody needed to eat a dick. I don't know.
mm, mm,
I think
mm,
that's where you get differences and people. I think it's very easy for people who watch Asmon to potentially take some of what he says very personal, and he often does. He touches on some highly charged topics on his stream. I don't know if you ever watched his streams, but he will. So I think that's where you get the biggest difference between someone like Co and then someone like him. And I have to say, I mean, I'll watch Asmon. I think some of what he does, I like some of it. I actually agree with some of a lot of the things he says from a gaming standpoint. But I don't know. I just really don't think that's the target audience here. I don't know Kira very well, so I don't know if that's somebody that likes PVX or not. I've just not watched their content, but I think the same could really be said of probably Peon and Force Gaming as well. So I don't know. I just wonder what it gets a little frustrating when they say their target audience and then they kind of bend a little bit more to strong bigger streamers that don't seem to be in that audience. So
Honestly, Kira just exists to call every game a scam until it releases or doesn't. So I don't know what his actual gameplay style is. It seems like he's just part of the outrage cottage industry.
I was gonna say one of the differences between Co and Asmon, I think too, and the way you describe them is like it doesn't matter to me what kind of comeuppance people get if you interfere with my gameplay goals, which is especially if I'm not in the mood for PvP. I don't care who wins the PvP battle or what comeuppance comes to the people who forced me into PvP when I wasn't in the mood for PvP or I had some other goals besides PvP. I'm going to be pissed off that I had to do PvP when I didn't want to do PvP. So I think that's the difference between Co, is Co doesn't mind PvP that much and Asmon does.
Yeah, I think you might be right about that because I get the feeling that I feel like over the years I've seen like Co and Elo and a few of the people that we knew as like kind of a bit of a tighter group of people who'd been doing the streaming thing and really putting the effort and the reps in, that they would be playing all sorts of games. They weren't just playing one type of game. And
Mm,
so yeah, if he's going to be playing, not that I can necessarily point my finger to a game in a stream, but like let's say they're playing Dead by Daylight, I wouldn't expect somebody who's playing that is going to be playing exclusively PvE in an MMO, for example. So, yeah, there is some of that, like playing the game to enjoy all of the game, that I've seen from kind of watching Co. And I don't really go through and watch a lot of what he does. I think I've seen him in more cameos than streams that I've watched over the past few years, but dude had a solid community when I was watching, and every now and then I'll see news about a game where he came through and brought his community, and they just blew everybody's minds. So that's kind of the difference. I don't really hear that sort of thing going on with some of the other names that we've mentioned. Um, Kind of looking a little bit at the feedback to the Alpha 2 stream on the forums, the post Vacnar made. I feel like a lot of people were just focused on the combat mechanics more than anything else, where I feel like there was just so much more to talk about with it. Um, people definitely have their opinions, and people definitely have the points they're making. And there's a lot of good points being made on it. But I think the post that I came across that I've liked is the one from Yokai Theater that starts with, the current story arc event quest in progress feels too brief and oversimplified. And I'm 100% there with that. Is I know this is just a demo. Do not read this as like a full story arc sort of thing, but that is something that I'm still very, very somewhere between curious and worried, as how much we're actually going to see the narrative and lore implications about the things that they've talked about, and the extent that these things are supposed to be working and functional, and really improving the meat of the content of the game, versus we basically just see, oh well, there's a POI, and here's what you do with this POI, and here's what you fight, and here's how you fight them, and here's a little bit of the story and implications of it, but we're not really going to tell you any more, and we're not going to tell you as much about what led into it. Yeah, I'm fine with them not showing off the narrative stuff as much right now, and just like kind of hinting at stuff and trying to get us a little bit excited about the different things. I think I'm a little bit more excited with Carfin because it's got that whole zone-wide transformation of the blood corruption, versus this is more, oh, you knocked down the old citadel and managed to get the relic out of it, and oh hey, it looks like the owner of that relic is decided they want it because they couldn't sneak in through the narrow little chasms and passageways and stuff to get it themselves. And I guess these aren't the kind of dragons that turn into a humanoid form to do things. So yeah, they were just waiting for you to go in and get that egg, you suckers. And now it's time to get eaten, unless you've got a whole bunch of buddies. But I do want to see, like, narrative is one of those things that for me, like, has to be there. I don't mind getting forced into PvP and places and things where I don't want to be, so long as the narrative components of the things are fun and enjoyable. And even if I get knocked over a couple times on the way to try to do something, that I still feel like I'm making positive contributions to the whole story of the server and the game world. So, I mean, that's kind of one of the things for me that's a big deal. Is I love the how many dynamic systems. I like that there's inklings of Star Wars Galaxies level variation in the crafting system, and potentially how varied the materials might be, traveling from different regions, having different properties that work in different ways. All of that stuff sounds great. The one last thing though is it's also still got to have a really good story, because that's the one other thing that for me is just missing from MMOs. It's, instead of being a single player game that you play with a bunch of other people, I really want it to feel like something where it's a shared sort of story that people are actively working together and collaborating or having conflicts with. Like I don't necessarily like all of the way that it forces you to pick a faction in New World, but I like abstract out New World to when they first landed on the island, that they all agreed we've got to fight this corruption. We've got to find a way to stay and protect ourselves and figure this out. But over time, it evolved into a conflict between three different recognizable groups who formed with different goals in mind, and the way they want to save the world is different. I don't like that they're arbitrarily automatically at war with each other, but I think about, like, for me, the ideal entry into Vera from Sanctus is that we're all trying to restore the world. We're all trying to figure out, what we can do to make the world, acceptable and livable, and restore the gods and all of that sort of stuff. But then how each of the different races and how the different cultures that form in different pockets of the world come to their decision about what they want to do to try to save the world and restore the gods. And that is where we'll see the conflict, that we have our opinions of how to do it, you have your opinions of how to do it. We both have the same goal, but we want to do it different ways, and we don't trust one another enough to actually, fully collaborate. So yeah, we will butt heads every now and then, and it's fine because conflict is okay for this setting. Like that's a little bit more of kind of what I'm hoping to see, instead of just like the what we ended up with in New World, which is you walk in, you're forced into three arbitrary factions. You had no part of developing how they got to be the way they are. They just are, and you got to join one of them. And that means you got to flag PvE, or otherwise there's two other groups of players out there that might decide to knock you over arbitrarily while you're doing the slow walk between point A and point B.
Yeah,
I
and I
won't
think
get you started,
especially when
CoStar TV, and welcome.
and I think especially when the impact doesn't really change the world at all. I think that's what we're really hoping to see. There was an interesting forum topic that said that uh, for Ashes to succeed, they really need to um, switch the design to having uh, hard factions.
Hard factions.
Like have, you know, established factions kind of similar to New World or
Mm.
WoW or
No, 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 no,
EverQuest.
no.
You really
If
need to
you've got
have
if you've
real
got hard
factions.
factions, you need to see a doctor.
Yeah, right? There's
If you
kills for
got
that.
hard factions, you gotta get checked out. There's something wrong going on.
Hmm. Yeah, Steven, and there's a reason for that. Steven is against
Mhm.
that. Yes.
Yeah. And going back to those documents I wrote back when Landmark was coming around, one of the ones I had was about getting rid of the guild as the primary form of organization
Mm.
and having layers upon layers of group organizations that organize in different ways and interface in different ways. You and some other people might be enemies in some context, but when it comes to the Tinkerers Guild and when you meet at the guild hall, all that beef goes aside because you're all trying to work together to advance tinkering. So your tinkering guild always has a leg up over the other one. So, I might fight that person out in the open field because, they're trying to get the resource I'm trying to get, sure. Well, once we're at the guild hall, it's like, hey, you know, I know I whipped your ass there 3 days ago over that fancy copper node, but yeah, I brought some with me. You wanna throw some in your research? Yeah, let's do it. That's the sort of like non hard factionalized interplay that I'm hoping to actually see. And this is one of the few games that I've seen that might actually be able to execute on that. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. So from the Dope Crew, ideally, and this is my opinion only, an MMO story is about the world, while a single player game is about the player. Yes, very much so.
It's
And
it's it's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, yeah. Mentioning that because I guess I had never in the past at least I've never considered a difference when it comes to just the pure story. Like when I play through WoW, like the story that you experience in WoW, it's going to be the same story everyone experiences. So I've never distinguished that from being different from a single player game. You know, a single player game, everyone experiences the same story. Just happens to be you're doing it alone, the same as most MMOs are. So I guess I've never really conceptually thought that the storytelling would be different. Um, you know, it's interesting to mention that while single player is about a single player game is about the player. Like what started this, as I mentioned, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a story that sort of sucked me in, and that's kind of what kept me going. And it wasn't so much about me. Like that's not why I enjoyed the story. It was the just the actual main two characters of that story are like I was just sort of a bystander, just watching it play out. You know, it really wasn't. I wasn't like the, you know, champion that. I don't know. Anyways, it's just an interesting thought. I had never considered that
Um,
separate.
I don't agree with what that's saying. I don't think. I mean, because I play RPGs of all kinds, I want to um have the experience of I'm trying to recreate living in a world virtually that I'm reading in fantasy novels. Um, and there,
AOA.
I don't necessarily need to be the hero, but I do need to be the protagonist. And I'm hoping that the world will change. So I think the problems with the storytelling that we usually get in MMORPGs is often like, okay, yay, I killed Fippy um Darkpaw, but now he's back in the exact same spot. So okay, I did it, but so what? We have these established cities. I mean, they were there when I got there, and they're still going to be there when I'm done, and nothing I do is really going to change anything. So one of my favorite things that I loved about Cataclysm is that it felt like I got to participate in ending this burning Mount Hegel. I was able to do stuff to resolve that, and the world seemed to change afterwards. And I don't necessarily have to be the hero of that, but I do want to be a participant in that. And um, you know, I think as a druid, you know, I go out and got to kill all this stuff. I would love to be able to heal NPCs and animals and like do some other stuff besides just combat. Um, and have that seemingly make a difference. I think there is a part where you can heal some zebra things or deer stuff, and then you come back 10 minutes later and they're still hanging around diseased. So I don't know if I have to be the hero, but I definitely want to be a protagonist and doing stuff. That's true in any RPG that I'm playing. And then the fun of MMOs is seeing what everybody else is doing. Like I'm interested in this, but what are the necromancers interested in doing? What are the shaman interested in doing? And how do those decisions change the world too? I mean,
Here's where I
so
get curious about connections to stories. Because for me, it does take. Oh, there's stupid ad break. I gotta remind me to mess
yeah.
around with those
Yeah,
settings.
I
I
will
always forget.
remind you. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I always forget. Damn, now I've even thrown. Oh, so one thing I'm curious about with how we were, how stories could be different though is the fact that you have these different branching story arcs. So, you know, will that add in different connections to for us to NPCs or even other players, just because of the nature of how this changes? Like Diggs might want you might be connected very high to you know, a character over in this node, and I might be really interested and connected to a group down in the adjoining node to the south, and we're sort of fighting. And one of us really wants to see that one character keep going, and the other, perish or whatever. I'm just curious how that will change sort of storytelling and how we um, feel about things. So
Yeah, I mean, that was the dream of Storybricks, was being able to affect the changes of the NPCs and how the NPCs think about you. And I like NPCs, so um, lots of times I kind of like NPCs more than I like other players or gamers, I should say. Um, but yeah, the idea that you could affect the way maybe the goblins are thinking about you, or even this dragon. Is the dragon chasing you because the dragon just hates people, or is the dragon chasing you because you stole the egg? And what happens if you say, "Okay, you've got the egg back. I'm done. Take the egg and go away." Can you do that, and the dragon will go away? Um, you know, can you do something to change the dragon's mind to think that,
mm-hmm.
okay, maybe it's not worth pursuing you? What kind of states can you put these NPCs in? That was kind of the dream for me of story bricks, but I think we're still too far away from that at the moment.
Yeah, it's one of
I
the
don't think
things.
that will happen before 2030.
It's one of the things that's been really fun with BG3 is sort of you don't have endless like possibilities, but you have a lot of different possibilities in how you interact with all of the characters,
Hmm.
even coming down to
Hmm.
just killing them, just for the hell of it, and
Hmm.
like killing your own partners if you want. But
Hmm.
I'm not saying that we need that level of detail. Obviously, there might be problems if you allow players to kill NPCs that other players need. Um,
Hmm.
but at least to do something different than everyone else. Oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to give you something
Hmm.
different. I'm going to, I don't know, whatever it might be. Um, I would like to see that flexibility. I don't know that we'll ever
Yeah, I
get it,
mean, I
but
love the thing that I love in D&D, as again Nero kind of texts to, is having a bard with high charisma and talking my way out, or bluffing my way out, or intimidating my way out of combat, and um, having a wide variety of ways to resolve conflict. Then I gotta kill you because combat's the only thing we got. So.
We, by mostly your direction, we kidnapped the bugbear sub boss of the first dungeon, brought him to the prison in town hall. Diggs brainwashed him into thinking he was the chosen leader by
The
one of
god of
the
the
specific
bugbears. Yeah.
gods. Yep. And then we got him a jeweler's brass great club that looks like gold to him, and went marching right on in. They thought we were a part of his combat force, that we were just some of the other mercenaries. We walk right into the leader. He raises his club, bashes that dude in the head. A little scuffle breaks out. Once their leader is down, Diggs does the thing again. So suddenly he's got the cool glowy black eyes and the cool aura effects, and his voice is all booming. And our dude who we brainwashed is now getting everybody to bend the knee. And what we ended up doing with that is legitimizing that specific group, getting them as a goblin bugbear hobgoblin civilization that we can actually work with civil society, while also helping them resist the incoming assault from the bad guys that we actually had in common. So that's the sort of thing, when Diggs is talking about using conversation and using charisma in like that sort of role play sense. That's what we're talking about. That's literally how the campaign went. It was great. It was
Mhm.
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to see that level of sort of play in MMORPG. I think it would be
Hmm. Hmm.
a lot of fun. There's I
Just
don't
being able to conk out your enemies and talk to them instead of just
yeah.
having to kill everything is like
Hmm.
huge change that you don't normally see.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who's played BG3, but fairly early on, I guess there's
Mm-hmm.
a big goblin camp and place that you have to go and find somebody and ultimately have to kill 3 of the goblin bosses. Well, one's a drow, but
Mm.
you could fight your way in and just do whatever the hell you want. You could try to kill everything, but you also have the option to um, essentially be like friendly with them. And so
Mm.
I took that route, and I could just mosey my ass on in and get to the first boss. And she's surrounded by like 6, 7 other characters. I'm like, shit, it's gonna be hard. Start talking to her. Through that conversation, she ends up wanting to show me something in private. So we go
Mm.
to her chambers, and I kill
Mm-hmm.
her. and
Oh.
there's no one else around. Like, so then I don't have to worry about all the other
Mm-hmm.
NPCs. Um, anyways,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of freedom, I guess, is what I would
Mm-hmm.
love to see. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure we're there yet though for that. So
Yeah.
not in
But
this setting.
yeah, kind of extrapolating that to this sort of setting, though, the idea that you could actually have a decent enough reputation with bandits or an enemy faction of any of the playable races, to be able to start to change their minds, change their opinions, or at least kind of point them in the right direction towards like what the real trouble and danger is that we're seeing in the world. Those are the sorts of things that I'd be hoping to see. That if all everybody does is kill every last camp of anybody who ever resists the players, that would end up starting to lead to one of those irrecoverable world corruption state events, because maybe you shouldn't actually have just killed everybody that didn't want to play ball. There could be other things they're doing and they don't want to participate with you because there's something that you're doing that um they find to be really bad, but they happen to be still trying to restore nature and do some of the other things that you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be nice to see, is what the actual goals and outcomes will be. Obviously, mindless undead, probably safe to knock those over if they don't really have much to talk about. Maybe there will be a way to speak to the dead and you will actually be able to talk to them instead of fight them. Yeah, there's something for necromancy.
Yeah.
This is fun. Over on YouTube, Omer says it would be interesting if you could go so hard into corruption it takes on a whole storyline that could benefit you later.
Well,
Mm.
I could see that you've gone so deep into the corruption that you're allowed to interface with some of the bad guys and start to learn their plans, and then how you redeem yourself from that, I don't know, because the mechanics of the system are still going to require you to do the XP debt to wear it all off, and you're going to have super stepped on attributes at that point because the corruption's going to take a hit to all of your stuff. But yeah,
Yeah,
there
I mean,
definitely could be avenues for it.
you're not supposed to get benefits from. You're not supposed to be encouraged to do the kinds of things that will gain you corruption. But if I did not mind the thought that I'm ruining other people's gameplay, I would definitely have an alt that was set to be a zombie BKer and just see how much corruption I can get. And then it's a zombie, so that's the whole point, is to see it fall apart. How long can I get this character to survive before it falls apart because it's just so corrupted. I mean, that actually the one concept sounds like fun. I would definitely play that if I didn't have to ruin other people's gameplay just to get all that corruption. But um
It's funny that you say that, because when I think about somebody who's willing to get corruption, I'm thinking about the person that's been watching somebody hit all the good nodes and they know like the pattern and the order, and you kill that person, you're going to get that 4x drop of materials off of them. It's going to be worth it, and you do it as a calculated risk. Like that's something where I could see people, not you doing it exactly,
yeah,
but
yeah. I don't care
I
about the risk, so
yeah.
that's not me. But yeah, I can see that.
Risk versus reward.
Yep.
That's what it all comes down to.
Yep. And don't forget to order a bloomin' dragon.
We all know that there are going to be a number of people. Well, I think there's going to be two groups. There's going to be one group that just love to fucking kill people, so they're going to be red no matter what. They don't care if it's their main. They probably want it to be their main because they want to be known as that person. That person that turns red that's going to kill you, that you cannot find, that kills the bounty hunters that come after them. I think you're going to have that group of people. And then you're going to have the other group of people like you just mentioned that are, I think there's going to be a large number, a very large number. I would actually be surprised if this is not sort of a requirement of some more sweaty guilds that players have an alt that is their sole purpose is to go and just go red, go in and disrupt and kill, and you don't worry about it. I think that will be very much what a lot of people have in their back pocket. And like I said, I actually think I would be surprised, any or just PvP guilds out there, if you've not thought to make this a requirement, you should. Um, well, you should because if you're competing with another guild for a world boss that just popped, why not let the other guild get there? Or whatever, just to send some alt army out and just murder everyone. Log back into your main character, and you go take the boss. Like I think that's going to be how a lot of people play. So, but definitely at the start of A2, I think we're going to see a lot of murder and mayhem. Uh, since you can't really find this anywhere else, right? Like this, I mean, there certainly are PvP-ish games out there, but they all have PvP free areas, which Ashes does not. So I think people will 100% be probably going corrupt until they just have to throw the character away and do something different. So
Didn't they have to turn off PvP for a while in A1?
Yeah, because they didn't have corruption. So it was just everybody's open PvP, open flag. And it's like, all right, well, that means it's just going to be an open gank fest because none of the mitigation factors are actually there. One of the things I think about with corruption too is Ultima Online. If you got your reputation all the way to the most dastardly, you had gigantic loss if you died. If you died. And I say if because all of the most successful PKers were people who had fairly decent connections, and they exploited a bit of a mechanical glitch, I will call it, where if I teleport from zone A through a portal to zone B, for some reason, I can start whacking people and killing them super fast before I've actually loaded for them. So most of the times, a portal would open, the entire final treasure room of a dungeon would get completely ransacked, everybody would die, everybody's best stuff would get looted from them, and none of the PKers were ever even potentially able to be scathed because the lag spike of them entering this dense zone gave them a sort of technical advantage, so they never died. And so it doesn't matter how bad the penalties are. Or the other one is the incognito spell. Do whatever bad things you're going to do and then cast incognito. If anybody does anything to you, suddenly their reputation's going down and they're the ones getting the hit. So those sorts of systems don't exist anymore because netcode and internet connectivity and speeds has gone way, way up since then. Plus our ability to deal with giant, lag spikes and rollback and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it ain't like those days where you're able to survive as a super evil PK because you're able to exploit the mechanics in such a way where you're just untouchable. Now you're actually putting risk on the line. You get deep in the corruption, you're gonna have quite a bit to have to dig out with. Hope you got a big shovel, or maybe I don't hope you have a big shovel. You dug your hole, now you're in it.
Wizard says, I think we underestimate people will have an alt character. I agree. I think Wizard, you made a comment somewhere else too that I wanted to mention that I did not. I think it was you about how the players. Where was it? I think I lost it. Effectively, somewhere there was a comment about that in order to be good at ashes, you're going to have to live ashes. Um, and I think to a degree that's probably accurate. The way everything's set up, like if you want to be a top dog, you're going to have to and be a part of, or even really a top dog in a guild, you're going to have to be ready to put in some time. I think that's how all of this is getting set up. So in that vein, having alts is going to be more time, but I think it's going to be required. So
I mean, I think in terms of time, the thing there that hits me is more like, you have to be level 50 to get a freehold. Other than that, I don't know that I would agree with that. But I mean, there are stuff that's waiting for you to be level 50 before you can do what you want to do. So,
there we go. Live and breathe it. Yes, that's what you said. Live and breathe it. Um, Although to be fair, like we've pretty much lived and breathed it for a while, and we're not playing. So, uh,
hmm
but anyways,
Yeah, no, I had also said another thing there. Just because you've got an alt doesn't mean that it's already, up and ready to gank. You got to level it up. You got to gear it up. You're going to probably need to engage in all the other facets of gameplay too, because you're going to want to have your guild and your local node benefits and all that sort of stuff actually helping and working in concert with your character. um it's actually kind of funny because I kind of think about the idea of somebody actually leveling up one character and not doing any trade skill or maybe just gathering with that character, and that's the one that they use for PvP, because they're not actually invested in the long term, versus the crafters that they want to be finding the cool recipes and stuff on and getting the cool materials are the ones that they put their full effort into, because those are the ones who are going to be their, you know, trade skill masters of the market or whatever. Because that's one of the other things that top rating guilds is going to need. They're going to need top level crafters of multiple uh mastery disciplines to be able to really cover the bases and not have to go outside the guild to get their resources.
sorry.
I still wonder how much of crafting is going to be individual effort versus group effort. Like it sounds like there's a lot of an emphasis on um, larger gathering, feeding, smaller concentrated crafters. But in reality, I have no idea, because I don't know if you'll be able to continue leveling up your skill, making any sort of item, or if there gets to be a point that there is an item that you get no more skill for making, even if you're making the best version of it anybody is making on the server. It's just because it's only a level 15, silver dagger or whatever. It's the best one anyone can get, but that level limit potentially is why it's not giving you the same experience as just crafting a max level steel greatsword. Might not be as fancy, might not be noteworthy, but it's for a certain power level. That's one of the other things I'm interested to see, because it makes me wonder if people will be able to build their way up doing things that are a little bit lower tier, but being able to, advance the skills and advance the point. And in that way, if everybody can eventually get a crafter up if they wanted to, it's just some people are going to have more of an emphasis early on. And as people leave the guild and people get certain blueprints that other people don't have, that priorities might change, whatever. But that's one of the things that I'm kind of interested in, is to see how the whole of the trade system is going to work and the advancement associated with it. Um, it'll be something to see.
Yeah, but what do y'all think about when we talk about? Obviously, there's when we talk about processing and crafting. I mean, do you think that characters should be able to do that all on their own? Should there be a PVE component? Like, what do you think about a system where, in order to process something, you need a specific oil, and you have to go get that oil from killing boars? Um, do you think it's good that having a system where those things interact, or should they be separate? Or because
I
we think about alts that are like just crafters. I tend to wonder if that's actually going to happen here.
I
Why wouldn't it?
I I think that the alts are going to be more of the people's main gatherers, because there's a peak on how far you can get in certain trade skills, that you're only going to be able to be, a grandmaster of a couple of things,
Mm-hmm.
but you'll still be a master of a lot of things, and you'll still be a journeyman in a lot of things. So you'll be able to feed yourself a lot of the materials, but there might be a point where, to make the absolute best, you need somebody who's a grandmaster in something that you're not. And then at that point, if you've got an alt that you've got to max level, it might not be so bad to start working on crafting and getting them into a discipline that you want as like an alt. So you can be like, when I was playing original first run WoW, I had maxed out Gnomish and maxed out Goblin Engineering between my Shaman and my Hunter. I had every blueprint except the one that I couldn't get after a year of doing Molten Core runs, and then pretty much stopped playing after that, because like, it, if I can't do the thing, a heroic amount of times and get the expected result, then it's not about being process oriented. The whole system sucks. And instead of being results oriented versus process oriented, find a different game was kind of my resolution for that. But it did require having two characters, but between them, I had mining on one and herbalism on the other. And even though I wasn't making potions, herbalism, it pays the bills and it helps keep the guild topped off with potions. So it was a worthy alt trade skill. If I needed metal, well, I just had it in the bank, or I had access to it from my main character, so it wasn't a big deal.
Well, we are getting to our hour and a half mark. Um, I don't know if there's anything left to talk about tonight. There's certainly more to talk. We didn't even get to the whole AE dev discussion thing. We can do
Yeah,
that next week.
there's plenty to talk about, but I think this would probably be a good time to wrap it up here.
Mhm.
Well, all
Yeah.
right. Everyone out there on Twitch and YouTube, thank you for joining us. It's, as always, fun having you in chat and interacting with you all. So, um, we do try to be on Discord, although we at times get a little bit quiet there. But certainly, feel free to pop in. Somebody pings us. We will always interact back with you. So,
Mhm.
um, come hang out with us. And yeah, I'm gonna be looking for people to play BG3 with me at some point. But anyways, I think I'm gonna be spending a lot of time on that game. I don't think there is
Hmm.
anyone actually streaming that we can raid. There is not, that would be worth raiding. So we're just going to call it from here. So thank you all. We will be back next Sunday, I believe. I don't think there's any reason not to, although we say that and occasionally things come up. But otherwise,
Yep.
we, otherwise we plan to be here next Sunday. And so y'all have a wonderful week, beautiful people, and we will see you next time.
Yep. Stay cool out there, everybody.